The night I found that burner phone, I was just looking for some damn Advil. My head was pounding. Claire had just torn into me again about boundaries and personal space. Real rich coming from someone who'd been controlling my life since I was 16. Since the night Mom and Dad died, I still remember that phone call. Claire's voice steady as a rock. "Ellie, there's been an accident. You need to come home. I was a junior at State, finally finding my groove. Had friends. A boyfriend. A major I actually liked. Then boom. Car accident on I-95. Black ice. Gone in an instant. Claire was 26 then. Already married to some finance guy she dumped 2 months later. Already living in Manhattan, already successful, already everything I thought I wanted to be. You can't stay in that dorm room forever," she'd said, packing up my stuff while I sat there in shock. "Come live with me. I'll take care of everything." And she did. She took care of everything. My college transfer to a school near her apartment. My major change to something more practical. The end of my relationship with Jake because he was clearly not serious about his future. "I'm just looking out for you," she'd say whenever I pushed back. "You're all I have left, Ellie. We need to stick together." Stick together. Right. Now I was crashing at her place in the Hamptons. Her and Marcus's beach house that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. It was supposed to be temporary. A month max while I figured out my life after my latest relationship imploded. That was 3 months ago. Their kitchen looked like a pharmacy exploded. Imported vitamins. Organic this. Gluten-free that. I yanked open what I thought was the medicine drawer. Wrong drawer. There it was. A cheap flip phone. The kind drug dealers use in movies. 5 numbers saved. That's it. And a text message still open on the screen. 420K coming in Monday. We'll wash it clean. I just stood there, frozen. Not because I didn't get it, but because I totally did. Put it back, Ellie." Claire's voice came from behind me, ice cold. I turned around. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Still in her yoga gear. Still looking perfect. Still looking like she owned the world, which apparently she did. "Claire, what the hell is this?" "Put it back!" I did, but my hands were shaking. "Marcus is laundering money, isn't he?" She didn't even blink. Just stared at me with those blue eyes that used to comfort me when I had nightmares. The same eyes that had looked so sad at Mom and Dad's funeral. Now they looked like winter. "You need to leave. Claire, I'm your sister. You need to leave. Tonight." That was it. No explanation. No, "let me explain." No, "it's not what it looks like." Just leave. I should have seen it coming. This was classic Claire. When I was 17 and wanted to spend the summer backpacking through Europe with friends instead of doing the internship she'd arranged, she'd found out the group was planning to do some partying and made sure I knew it. When I was 22 and got serious with a guy she didn't like, suddenly his ex-girlfriend was calling me with stories about his cheating. Stories that fell apart later, but not until after I dumped him. Claire always knew what was best for me. And what was best for me was whatever kept me close to her. 2 days later, I was on the train back to Manhattan, stuffed into my crappy studio apartment that smelled like the Indian restaurant downstairs. Claire wouldn't take my calls. Marcus wouldn't either. Then Marcus texted me. One message. "You made your choice. So did she." At the time, I thought he meant Claire had chosen him over me. That I'd forced her to pick sides by snooping around. 3 weeks later, his hedge fund imploded. The news called it one of the biggest financial scandals in recent history. Apparently, Marcus had been running a Ponzi scheme that made Bernie Madoff look like an amateur. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was how fast it all came down. Marcus called me the night before the feds raided his office. "Ellie, it's Marcus." I almost hung up. "What do you want?" "I need you to know something. About Claire." "I don't want to hear it." "She's not who you think she is." I laughed, bitter. "Yeah, I figured that out when I found the burner phone." Long pause. "What phone?" "The flip phone in your kitchen drawer, with the money laundering text." Another pause, longer. "Ellie, I don't have a burner phone." My blood went cold. "What? I've never owned a burner phone in my life. All my business is above board. Was above board. Then who's—" "Think about it." The line went dead. I sat there in my tiny apartment staring at my phone. thinking about Claire's face that night. How she hadn't seemed surprised. How quickly she'd told me to leave. How she'd said put it back, like she knew exactly what I'd found. The FBI agent looked exactly like you'd expect. Cheap suit. Bad coffee breath. Notebook that had seen better days. Miss Sloane, we understand you were staying with Marcus Whitmore and your sister recently. Yeah, so Agent Johnson, that was his name. Straight out of Central Casting, flipped through his notes. We're trying to establish a timeline of Mr. Whitmore's activities in the weeks leading up to the collapse of his fund. I thought about Marcus's phone call. About his voice when he said, "She's not who you think she is." Did you observe anything unusual about Mr. Whitmore's business activities? I thought about that phone. About the text message. About Claire's face when she told me to leave. No, nothing. The lie came out smooth as butter. I told myself I was protecting Claire. She was all the family I had left. Any knowledge of offshore accounts. Unusual financial transactions. Nope. But even as I said it, I was thinking about all those times Claire had helped me. The college transfer. The internship. The way she always seemed to know exactly what to say to make my boyfriends disappear. The way she'd raised me to need her. Agent Johnson wrote something down. We may need to speak with you again. Sure thing. After he left, I felt sick. But I told myself I'd done the right thing. Then they subpoenaed Claire. I watched her testimony on the local news. She looked incredible, of course. Expensive black dress. Hair pulled back. The grieving wife who'd been betrayed. I had no idea what Marcus was doing. She said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I thought he was just working hard, providing for us. I was just a wife. Just a wife. Right. The performance was flawless. The way she hesitated before certain answers. The way her voice cracked when she talked about feeling so stupid for not seeing the signs. But I knew Claire. I'd lived with her manipulation for 10 years. This wasn't grief, this was theater. The reporter ate it up. Mrs. Whitmore maintained her innocence throughout the hour-long testimony, claiming her husband had hidden his illegal activities from her completely. He controlled everything. Claire continued. The finances, the business relationships, even my social calendar. I see now that he was isolating me, making sure I couldn't discover what he was really doing. Isolating her. Like she'd isolated me from every relationship, every opportunity, every choice that might take me away from her. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But something kept nagging at me. Something about how calm she'd been that night. How quickly she'd told me to leave. How she hadn't seemed surprised at all. Then I remembered the camera. Shh! Before I'd left the Hamptons, I'd helped them install a Nest Cam in the sunroom. Claire had been paranoid about break-ins after some fancy house down the beach got robbed. We need to be able to monitor the house when we're not there, she'd said, directing me to mount it in the corner, where it had a perfect view of the room. The camera was linked to my phone. I'd totally forgotten about it, until I saw Sloth Hour Trust mentioned on the news. Some shell company connected to Marcus's scheme. I was eating cereal, half watching the morning news when I heard the name. Something clicked. I grabbed my phone and opened the Nest app. The camera was still active, still recording. I scrolled back. 3 nights before Marcus got arrested, there was Claire, alone in the sunroom at 2 a.m, wearing jeans and a hoodie I'd never seen before. Moving with purpose, she had a blue duffel bag on the table. She was stuffing it with cash. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills. No tears, no confusion, no grieving wife who knew nothing. She moved like a professional. Like she'd done this 100 times before. She checked her phone, made a call. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language was all business. She nodded. Hung up. Zipped up the bag. Then she did something that made my blood freeze. She looked directly at the camera and smiled. Not a sad smile, not a worried smile. The smile of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I watched it 3 times, then I threw up. My sister, my perfect, successful older sister who'd raised me after our parents died, was the one running the whole damn show. 2. I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's phone call. About what he'd said, she's not who you think she is. So I started digging. Claire had always been successful. Even in college, she'd had internships at top firms. jobs lined up before graduation, a network of contacts that seemed to appear out of nowhere. I'd always admired it. Her drive, her ambition, her ability to land on her feet no matter what. Now I wondered how much of it was legitimate. I spent hours online researching her past employers, her business associates, the timeline of her career. What I found made me sick. Whitmore Industries wasn't Marcus's first hedge fund. It was his third. The first two had also collapsed under suspicious circumstances, and Claire had been connected to both of them, not as a wife, as a consultant. The pattern was always the same. She'd get involved with a firm, help them expand their client base, introduce them to new investment opportunities. Then 18 months later, everything would fall apart. Clients would lose millions. The firm would collapse, and Claire would walk away clean, usually with a substantial severance package. Marcus was just the latest mark, except this time she'd made it personal. This time she'd married him. The DA's office called me 2 weeks later. "Miss Sloan, we'd like you to testify as a character witness for your sister." A character witness, Jesus. What exactly would I need to say? Just the truth about your relationship. How she supported you after your parents' death. How she couldn't possibly have been involved in her husband's crimes. I thought about all those years. All those times Claire had protected me, guided me, made decisions for me. All those times she'd isolated me from anyone who might take me away from her. And if I can't say that, that she couldn't have been involved. Long pause. "Miss Sloan, do you have information relevant to this case?" I thought about the video, about the research I'd done, about the pattern of destruction Claire had left in her wake, about all the victims who'd lost everything because of her. "Yee, I do. We'll be in touch." But even as I said it, I felt like I was falling. Like the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. Because testifying against Claire meant admitting something I'd never wanted to face. That the person who'd raised me, who'd claimed to love me, who'd been my whole world for 10 years, had been using me the entire time. I started having panic attacks. Not little anxiety moments. Full-blown can't-breathe world-is-ending panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning soaked in sweat, thinking about Claire's smile when she looked at that camera. About all the times she'd helped me make decisions. About how she'd shaped my entire adult life. Had anything I'd done been my choice? Or had it all been part of her plan to keep me dependent on her? The internship at the nonprofit instead of the marketing firm I'd wanted. Nonprofits look so much better on a resume, sweetie. The apartment near her place instead of the one in Brooklyn I'd loved. Brooklyn is so dangerous, and the commute would be terrible. The job at the consulting firm where she knew the hiring manager. "It's all about connections, Ellie. Let me help you. Even my relationships. How many guys had she scared off? How many opportunities had she killed before I even knew they existed?" I thought about Jake, my college boyfriend. How Claire had convinced me he was holding me back from my potential. How she'd shown me photos of him at parties, arm around other girls, looking like he was cheating. I'd never questioned those photos. Never asked where she'd gotten them. Never wondered why she always seemed to have dirt on the people I cared about. 3 weeks before I was supposed to testify, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a manila envelope with my name written in block letters. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Me at 17 leaving the therapist's office Claire had insisted I see after our parents died. Me at 19 drunk at a party doing things I barely remembered. Me at 23 crying outside David's apartment after another fight. Years of my worst moments, my most vulnerable times, all photographed, all documented, all saved. At the bottom of the pile was a note. "Just in case you forget who's been taking care of you all these years." See, I stared at those photos for hours. At the evidence of a life I'd thought was private. Claire had been watching me, documenting me, collecting ammunition, for 10 years. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old wood. I sat in the witness waiting room checking my phone obsessively. The video was still there. Still damning. But now I had something else too. The photos, the research, the whole ugly truth about what Claire really was. Claire's lawyer found me. Richard something. Expensive suit. Shark eyes. "Miss Sloan, I wanted to speak with you before you testify. Let me guess. You want to make sure I understand the full picture." He smiled. Like a predator. Your sister loves you very much. She's sacrificed a lot for you over the years. Sacrificed. Raising a teenager when she was barely an adult herself. Supporting you through college. Helping you find jobs. Dealing with your instability. My instability. There it was. He handed me a yellow legal pad. Screenshots. Text messages. From 8 months ago when I was going through my messy breakup with David. Messages I'd sent to Marcus when I was drunk and devastated. And not thinking straight. God, I wish David would just disappear. Sometimes I fantasize about burning his apartment down. If I had the money, I'd hire someone to ruin his life. Desperate. Embarrassing. Definitely not illegal, but compromising as hell if taken the wrong way. These would look interesting to a jury, don't you think? Richard said. Especially given your history of emotional problems. I stared at those screenshots. My own words weaponized against me. But this time I wasn't surprised. This time I understood exactly what was happening. She saved these too, huh? Your sister keeps everything, Miss Sloane. She has to. When you're responsible for someone who's as fragile as you've been, documentation becomes important. Fragile, right. What about the other victims? Richard's smile faltered. I'm sorry. The other firms she destroyed. The other men she married and ruined. Do you have documentation on them too? I don't know what you're talking about. Brennan Capital, Meridian Investments, ring any bells? His face went white. Yeah, I did my homework. Claire's been running this con for years. Marcus is just the latest mark. Miss Sloane, I think you're confused. The only thing I'm confused about is why it took me so long to figure it out. I stood up. Tell Claire I got her message. The photos were a nice touch. What photos? Ask her, she'll know. The courtroom was packed. News crews. Curious locals. Marcus sat at the defendant's table looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 weeks. He caught my eye as I walked past. Mouthed, thank you. I nodded. He'd tried to warn me. Even facing his own destruction, he'd tried to tell me the truth about Claire. Claire sat in the front row behind him. She caught my eye and smiled. That same smile she'd given me when I was scared of thunderstorms. When I graduated high school. When she promised everything would be okay after Mom and Dad died. The same smile she'd given the camera while stuffing cash into a duffel bag. The prosecutor stood up. The state calls Ellie Sloane. My legs felt like jello walking to the witness stand. Miss Sloane, you're the defendant's sister-in-law, correct? Yes. And you stayed with the defendant and his wife for approximately 3 months earlier this year. Yeah. During that time, did you observe anything that suggested Mr. Whitmore was engaged in illegal financial activities? I looked at Claire. She nodded slightly. Encouraging. Trusting. Still playing the role of the loving sister. But I could see something else in her eyes now. Something calculating. Something cold. The same look she'd had when she told me to transfer schools. When she convinced me to break up with Jake. When she arranged my entire life to keep me close to her. Miss Sloane, I thought about those screenshots, about my drunk texts to Marcus, about how they'd look splashed across the internet. Then I thought about all the other victims. All the people who'd lost everything because no one had been brave enough to stop her. On the night of February 12th, were you aware of Mr. Whitmore's whereabouts? Yes, but that's not the question you should be asking. The courtroom went dead quiet. I'm sorry. You should be asking where Claire was, because I have footage of her moving the cash. Chaos. Richard jumping up, shouting objections. Claire's face going white as paper. Marcus turning around in his chair like he'd been slapped, but not surprised. Marcus looked relieved. Your Honor, I have video evidence on my phone that shows Mrs. Whitmore, not Mr. Whitmore, handling large amounts of cash 3 nights before the arrests. The judge banged his gavel. Counselors approached the bench. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. Completely steady. This is from a security camera I helped install at their residence. The timestamp shows February 9th at 2:17 a.m. Claire was staring at me from the gallery. Not like a sister anymore. Like a stranger who'd just realized she'd been played. The prosecutor took my phone, watched the video. His eyes got wide. Your Honor, the state requests an immediate recess to review this evidence. The judge looked pissed. 30 minutes. As they led me out of the courtroom, I walked right past Claire. She grabbed my arm. How could you do this to me? She whispered. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. I stopped, looked at her, really looked at her. The mask was slipping. For the first time in 10 years, I could see the real Claire underneath. And she was nothing like the sister I'd thought I knew. You didn't raise me, Claire. You collected me, like evidence. Her grip tightened. Everything I did was to protect you. Everything you did was to control me. I pulled my arm free. The photos were a mistake, by the way. They just proved what I already suspected. What photos? She was still lying, even now, even caught red-handed. You know what the sad part is, I said. I would have kept protecting you, even knowing what you were, because I thought you loved me. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time. I do love you, Ellie. You're all I have. No, I said. I was all you had to control. There's a difference. I turned to walk away. You'll regret this, she called after me. Without me, you're nothing. You'll fail at everything just like you always do. I stopped, turned back. Maybe, but at least I'll fail on my own terms. The recess stretched to 2 hours, then 4. Reporters clustered outside the courthouse, speculating about what the new evidence might be. I sat in a conference room with the prosecutor walking him through everything. The video, the research I'd done on Claire's past, the pattern of destroyed firms and ruined lives. Why didn't you come forward with this sooner? He asked. Because I didn't want to believe it. He nodded. Family is complicated. This wasn't family, this was ownership. When we finally went back into the courtroom, Claire was sitting alone. Marcus had been moved to a different section. Richard was huddled with 3 other lawyers, all of them looking grim. The judge called for order. Based on new evidence presented to this court, the state is filing additional charges against Mrs. Claire Whitmore. Claire stood up slowly. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Mrs. Whitmore, you are charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. How do you plead? Claire looked at me across the courtroom. One last time. I expected anger, hatred, blame. Instead, she just looked tired. Not guilty, Your Honor. Of course. She was going to fight this to the end. The judge set bail at $2 million. Claire's face didn't change, but I saw her hands shake as they led her away. Marcus caught up with me outside the courthouse. Thank you, he said. I know that wasn't easy. How long did you know about Claire? Not long enough. He looked older than his 43 years. She's good at what she does. Makes you feel like you're in control while she pulls all the strings. Why did you marry her? He laughed bitterly. Because I thought I was saving her. She played the victim so well. Said she'd been hurt before, needed someone she could trust. And you believed it? Wouldn't you have? I thought about all those years. All those times Claire had protected me. Made me feel special. Made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered to her. Yeah, I said. I would have. Marcus nodded. She's going to fight the charges. Claim you're lying. That the video is fake. That you're mentally unstable and trying to frame her. I know. Are you ready for that? I looked back at the courthouse. At the reporters setting up for the evening news. At the circus that was about to become my life. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You could have stayed quiet, kept protecting her. No, I said, I really couldn't, because for the first time in 10 years I'd made a choice that was entirely my own. And it felt like freedom.